The Galactic Council met in their great hall on Nexus Prime, surrounded by floating screens and ancient symbols of power. 400 species sent their leaders here, and together they ruled over 10,000 worlds. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars die and new ones born. Nothing surprised them anymore. So when the Velthari Empire asked permission to harvest resources from a small blue planet called Earth, the Council barely discussed it. The vote took less than 3 minutes. Earth was listed in their records as a Class 7 primitive world. The creatures there had only recently discovered how to leave their own atmosphere. They had no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. They were insects, really. Clever insects who had learned to build tall buildings and send radio signals into space. But insects all the same. Admiral Tovan of the Velthari received the Council's approval with a smile. His species had conquered dozens of worlds. They were tall beings with gray skin and 4 eyes that could see in complete darkness. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their soldiers felt no fear and no mercy. Tovan gathered his fleet. 300 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. He did not expect any real resistance. This would be a simple operation. Land, extract resources, eliminate any creatures that caused problems, and leave. His officers estimated the entire conquest would take perhaps 2 weeks. They were very, very wrong. The Velthari fleet arrived in Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. Humans later remembered this detail because it seemed so ordinary. A Tuesday. People were going to work, children were going to school, and somewhere in the cold emptiness of space, 300 alien warships prepared to end their civilization. The first plasma bombardment hit Seoul at 9:47 a.m. local time. The city of 10 million people had no warning. One moment, the morning rush hour filled the streets with cars and buses. The next moment, a beam of blue fire fell from the sky and turned everything to ash. The Han River boiled. Buildings melted like candles. In 3 seconds, 2 million people died. Then New York, then Mumbai, then Lagos, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sao Paulo. The Velthari ships moved across Earth's sky like angry gods, and wherever they passed, death followed. Yuna was underground when the attack began. She was a lieutenant in the Korean military, stationed at a secret bunker built deep inside the mountains of Gangwon province. The bunker was designed to survive nuclear war. No one had considered whether it can survive alien invasion. She watched the feeds coming in from around the world. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not break. But inside her chest, something cold and hard was forming. Something that would never go away. Beside her stood Do-hyun, a physicist who had spent 15 years working on theories that his colleagues called impossible. He believed that space could be folded, that ships could travel between dimensions, that energy could be pulled from the fabric of reality itself. Everyone had laughed at him. Now, watching cities burn on the screens above them, no one was laughing. General Jisoo arrived 3 hours after the attack began. She was 62 years old, small and thin, with gray hair cut short, and eyes that had seen too much death. She had commanded troops in 3 wars. She had never lost. But this was different. This was not a war between nations. This was extinction. How many? Jisoo asked quietly. We do not know yet, Yuna replied. Hundreds of millions, maybe more. The number was too large to understand. Yuna's mind refused to process it, so she focused on what she could do. She focused on survival. The Velthari ground forces landed the next day. They expected scattered survivors hiding in ruins. They found something else entirely. Humans had spent their entire history fighting each other. They had developed weapons for every situation, tactics for every terrain, strategies for every enemy. They had never stopped preparing for war. Junho was a farmer before the invasion. He grew rice in the fields outside Daegu. When the plasma fire fell, his farm burned, but he survived. He walked for 3 days through the ashes, until he found other survivors. They had weapons taken from dead soldiers and police. They had anger that burned hotter than any alien plasma. "We cannot win a direct fight," Junho told his small group. "So we will not fight directly. We will become ghosts. We will become nightmares." They attacked a Velthari patrol that night. The aliens had better weapons, better armor, better technology. But they did not expect humans to fight with such desperate fury. They did not expect farmers and teachers and office workers to throw themselves at armed soldiers with nothing but knives and hatred. The patrol died, all of them. Junho lost half his people, but he gained weapons and supplies. More importantly, he gained hope. In the bunker, Do-hyun worked without sleep. His impossible theories suddenly seemed very possible when the alternative was death. He pulled together every brilliant mind that had survived the attack. Engineers, physicists, mathematicians, programmers. They worked in shifts, 20 hours a day, racing against extinction. The Velthari use standard hyperspace travel, Do-hyun explained to Jisoo. They fold space in a straight line, but there is another way, a better way. We can step outside space entirely, move through dimensions they cannot see or detect. "How long?" Jisoo asked. "Maybe a year." "Make it faster." Yuna organized the resistance. She connected scattered groups across the planet, using old radio frequencies the Velthari did not monitor. She established supply lines through underground tunnels and mountain caves. She turned survivors into soldiers, and soldiers into something more dangerous. The Velthari began to notice that their patrols were disappearing, that their supply convoys never arrived, that their soldiers were found dead in ways that made no sense. They increased their forces, tightened their security, burned more cities in punishment. But the humans kept fighting. They fought in the ruins of Seoul and the forests of Siberia. They fought in the deserts of Africa and the mountains of South America. They fought with guns and bombs and bare hands. They fought because they had no other choice. Admiral Tovan reported to the Galactic Council that Earth's pacification was proceeding on schedule. He did not mention the growing losses. He did not mention the fear he saw in his soldiers' eyes. He did not mention the nightmares. Deep underground, Yuna looked at the first prototype of Do-hyun's dimensional drive. It was small and ugly and probably would not work. But it was hope, and hope was all they needed. 6 months passed after the first attack. Admiral Tovan sent regular reports to the Velthari homeworld and to the Galactic Council. The reports were filled with good news: cities secured, resources flowing, resistance crushed. Earth would soon be a productive colony, its surviving population put to work in mines and factories. The reports were lies. Tovan sat alone in his command ship, staring at casualty numbers that grew larger every day. He had lost 4,000 soldiers in the past month. Not to battles he could understand. He lost them to shadows, to attacks that came from nowhere and disappeared just as quickly. To humans, who seemed to know exactly where his troops would be before they arrived. The worst part was the silence. When the Velthari conquered other worlds, the conquered species eventually gave up. They accepted their fate. They became quiet and obedient. But humans never stopped fighting. Even when they were surrounded, outnumbered, and outgunned, they kept fighting. And when they died silently, staring at their killers with eyes full of promise. Promise of revenge. Junho had grown his small group into an army of 10,000 fighters spread across 3 continents. They called themselves the Ghosts because they appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before the enemy could respond. They used the terrain humans knew so well: tunnels and sewers, forests and mountains, abandoned buildings, and underground bunkers. The Velthari could not find them because they were everywhere and nowhere. "We are not trying to defeat them," Junho explained to his commanders. "We are trying to bleed them. Every soldier they lose is a soldier who cannot protect something else. Every supply convoy we destroy is food and weapons they do not have. We make this occupation so expensive that they will wish they had never come." His commanders nodded. They understood. This was not about victory. This was about making the enemy pay for every single inch of ground. In the deep bunker beneath the mountains, Do-hyun finally succeeded. The dimensional drive worked. It was not perfect. It was dangerous and unstable and consumed enormous amounts of energy. But it worked. A small probe disappeared from their laboratory and reappeared 3 kilometers away, inside a Velthari supply depot. The Velthari guards did not understand what happened. One moment, their depot was secure. The next moment, it exploded in flames, destroyed by a bomb that came from thin air. Yuna smiled for the first time since the invasion began. "Build more," she said. "Build them bigger." The next 6 months were different. Humanity was still losing. They were still outnumbered and outgunned. But now they had something the Velthari did not understand. Now they had weapons that should not exist. Ships began disappearing. Not human ships, Velthari ships. A patrol vessel vanished near the moon. A transport ship disappeared in orbit. A battle cruiser simply stopped responding to communications, and was later found drifting, its entire crew dead from explosive decompression. The humans never claimed responsibility. They never sent threats or demands. They simply struck and vanished, leaving behind only death and questions. Admiral Tovan requested reinforcements. The Velthari homeworld sent 50 more ships. 3 of them were destroyed before they even reached Earth's atmosphere. The humans appeared from empty space, fired weapons that cut through shields like paper, and disappeared again before the Velthari could return fire. General Jisoo commanded these attacks from her bunker. She had studied the Velthari for months, learning their tactics, their weaknesses, their fears. She knew they were proud and arrogant. She knew they had never faced an enemy they could not overwhelm with superior numbers and technology. She knew they did not understand guerrilla warfare. So she taught them. "The goal is not to destroy their ships," Jisoo told Yuna. "The goal is to destroy their confidence. Make them afraid to send patrols. Make them afraid to leave their bases. Make them afraid of the dark." The strategy worked. Velthari soldiers began refusing orders. Officers demanded transfers away from Earth. Morale collapsed as rumors spread of ghost ships and invisible enemies and a species that simply would not die. The Galactic Council grew concerned. Counselor Mira of the Sindari Collective requested detailed reports from the Velthari. The reports stopped making sense. They spoke of impossible attacks and unexplainable losses. They spoke of human weapons that violated known physics. They spoke of fear. "Send a reconnaissance fleet," Mira ordered. "Find out what is happening in that system." 20 ships traveled to Earth. None returned. The last transmission received was a single word, screamed by a dying pilot. "Impossible." The Council sent more ships. Same result. Every vessel that entered the Sol system either disappeared or sent back fragmentary reports filled with terror. One recording showed a Velthari captain watching his own bridge crew die around him, killed by weapons that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. "They are inside our ships," the captain whispered before the recording ended. "They are everywhere." Do-hyun had figured out how to use dimensional travel not just for ships, but for soldiers. Small teams of humans could now appear inside enemy vessels, complete their mission, and vanish before anyone could respond. The Velthari had no defense against enemies who did not exist in normal space. Yuna led one of these teams herself. She materialized in the engine room of a Velthari destroyer, planted explosives, and was gone before the crew even knew she was there. The ship died 30 seconds later, torn apart by its own reactor. Back in the bunker, construction continued on something larger, the first true human warship, built with dimensional drives and weapons powered by energy pulled from the space between realities. They called it the Silent Blade. Admiral Tovan finally admitted the truth to the Velthari High Command. Earth was not pacified, Earth was fighting back, and Earth was winning. The High Command recalled their entire fleet to defend the homeworld. They abandoned Earth and its stubborn, impossible inhabitants. They fled back to their own space, hoping to regroup and plan a new strategy. They did not understand. There was no safety in retreat. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for revenge, and revenge has no borders. Junho watched the last Velthari transport lift off from Earth's surface. His fighters stood beside him, their weapons lowered, their eyes fixed on the sky. "Is it over?" someone asked. Junho shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "It is just beginning." In orbit above the scarred and burning planet, the Silent Blade powered up its engines. Yuna stood on the bridge, surrounded by officers who had lost everything to the Velthari. Family, friends, homes, hope. Now they had a new hope. A darker hope. A hope built from rage and loss, and the absolute certainty that those who had hurt them would pay. "Set course for Velthari space," Yuna ordered. The ship disappeared from normal space, leaving behind a wounded Earth and a promise of fire. The Velthari homeworld burned for 3 days. Yuna watched from orbit as cities that had stood for 10,000 years turned to ash. The Silent Blade was not alone now. 12 human warships surrounded the planet, their weapons firing in steady rhythm. Each shot punched through shields that were supposed to be unbreakable. Each explosion ended lives that had never known fear until now. Admiral Tovan died on the second day. His flagship tried to flee, but Sungho, captain of the human vessel Retribution, appeared directly in front of him. The battle lasted 4 seconds. Tovan's ship became a cloud of burning metal and screaming atmosphere. Sungho was 23 years old. He had been a university student studying marine biology before the invasion. His entire family died in Seoul on the first day. Now he commanded a ship capable of destroying worlds, and he did so with a smile that never reached his eyes. "The Admiral is dead," he reported to Yuna. "Should we accept their surrender?" Yuna considered the question. The Velthari had finally started sending messages begging for peace. Their leaders promised anything: resources, territory, slaves, information. They would give humanity whatever it wanted if the killing would just stop. "Did they accept our surrender?" Yuna asked quietly. Sungho knew the answer. Everyone knew the answer. When Seoul burned, when billions died, the Velthari had not paused to negotiate. They had not offered mercy or terms. They had simply killed. "Continue the operation," Yuna ordered. When it was over, the Velthari Empire ceased to exist. 200 star systems, millions of soldiers, a civilization that had endured for millennia. Gone. Erased. Their colonies were occupied by human forces. Their population was scattered across refugee camps on worlds that would barely accept them. The galaxy watched in horror. Counselor Mira called an emergency session of the Galactic Council. 400 species sent their leaders to Nexus Prime, all of them demanding answers. What had happened in the Sol system? How had a primitive species destroyed one of the galaxy's great powers? What did this mean for everyone else? They must be stopped, Counselor Torvak of the Kethrani declared. His species had 4 arms and skin like rough stone. They were warriors who had fought dozens of wars and won most of them. We must assemble a combined fleet and crush these humans before they become a greater threat. Other counselors agreed. The humans were dangerous. They had to be contained or destroyed before they could do more damage. Then the message arrived. A human ship had appeared at the edge of Council space. Not one of their small raiders, or even their new warships. This was something different. Something enormous. The vessel was larger than any dreadnought in the galaxy, shaped like a blade of pure darkness. It absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Sensors could not determine its size, or composition, or weapons. The ship requested permission to send representatives to address the council. Mira wanted to refuse. Torvak wanted to attack. Others suggested ignoring the humans entirely. But in the end, fear won. The council agreed to receive the human delegation. They told themselves it was diplomacy. In truth, they were simply too afraid to say no. 3 humans walked into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Yuna entered first. She wore a uniform of pure black, decorated only with a small blue and green circle over her heart. Earth. The planet that should have been easy prey. The planet that had turned the galaxy upside down. She walked with the calm confidence of someone who had nothing left to fear. Behind her came Do-hyun. He carried a small device that looked like a metal cube covered in glowing lines. Every scanner in the chamber immediately malfunctioned when he entered. Security officers reached for their weapons, but Do-hyun only smiled gently and set the device on the floor. It hummed quietly, doing nothing obvious, but every counselor felt suddenly naked, exposed, watched. Last came Jisoo. She was old now, older than she had been 2 years ago. The war had taken years from her life, but her eyes were sharp and her steps were steady. She had commanded the destruction of an empire. She had ordered the deaths of millions, and she had done it all without hesitation, because hesitation meant extinction. The 3 humans stood before 400 species, and the 400 species were silent. "You know who we are," Yuna began. Her voice carried through the chamber without amplification. "You know what we have done. You know why." Counselor Mira found her courage. "You committed genocide. The Velthari were not soldiers. Many were civilians, children." "Yes," Yuna agreed, "they were." She did not apologize. She did not explain. She simply acknowledged the truth and waited. "Where is the Velthari delegation?" another counselor demanded. "They have a right to be heard." "The Velthari Empire no longer exists," Jisoo replied. Her voice was flat and empty, like a recording of something that had once been human. "There is no delegation to send." The chamber exploded into noise. Counselors shouted in a dozen languages. Translators struggled to keep up. Security forces moved closer to the human delegation, weapons ready. Torvak pushed through the crowd. "You expect us to believe that 300 primitive ships destroyed the entire Velthari military, conquered 200 systems, eliminated a civilization?" Do-hyun spoke for the first time. His voice was soft and calm, like a teacher explaining simple math to slow students. "We did not use 300 ships. We used 12. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. 12 ships, Do-hyun continued. Each one capable of appearing anywhere in the galaxy without warning. Each one armed with weapons that your physics says should not exist. Each one crewed by humans who have lost everything and fear nothing. He picked up his small device and held it in front of him. This is a demonstration model. A toy, really. The real version is installed on our ships. It allows us to fold space, step between dimensions, and strike from angles your defenses cannot cover. Impossible, Torvak growled. Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. You keep using that word. The Velthari used it too, right up until they stopped existing. Jisoo stepped forward, and every counselor stepped back. "We are not here to threaten you. We are here to explain new realities. The galaxy has changed. Humanity has changed. You need to understand what that means." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had ruled the stars for longer than humanity had existed. Beings of incredible power and ancient wisdom. Beings who had never imagined that soft, primitive creatures from a small blue planet could ever challenge them. "We want peace," Jisoo said, "but we are prepared for war." The council demanded proof. They could not simply accept the word of 3 humans. The Velthari Empire had been powerful beyond measure. No one could destroy it so completely with only 12 ships. It was impossible. It had to be impossible, because if it was not impossible, then everything the galaxy believed about power and safety was wrong. Yuna nodded to Dohyun. He touched his device, and the chamber filled with light. Holographic images appeared above the counselors' heads. Not artistic recreations, not propaganda. Real footage captured by Velthari military drones. Intercepted communications. Sensor logs from destroyed ships. The council watched their own intelligence turned against them. They saw the silent blade appear in the middle of a Velthari battle formation. No hyperspace signature. No warning. Just empty space one moment, and a massive black ship the next. The Velthari commander barely had time to raise shields before weapons fired. Beams of pure white energy cut through armor like it was paper. A dozen ships died in seconds. They saw ground combat on a Velthari colony world. Human soldiers in black armor moved through the streets like shadows. They did not march in formation or follow standard tactics. They appeared from walls and floors and ceilings. They struck and vanished and struck again. Velthari troops fired wildly at enemies they could barely see. They saw the Velthari homeworld, the greatest defensive system in the galaxy, designed to stop any invasion. Human ships simply bypassed it. They appeared inside the defense grid, already firing. Orbital platforms exploded. Ground installations burned. The sky filled with falling debris. Counselor Mira covered her eyes. She could not watch anymore, but the images kept coming. They saw Admiral Tovin's final moments. His ship surrounded by human vessels, his crew dead or dying, his options gone. He transmitted a final message to the council before the end. "We were wrong," Tovan said. His 4 eyes were wide with terror. "We were so wrong. They are not primitives. They are something else, something the galaxy has never seen. Do not fight them. Do not provoke them. Just stay away from Earth. Stay away from them. Please." The transmission ended in static and fire. Jisoo let the silence stretch before she spoke. "You wanted proof? There it is. Every battle, every loss, every mistake the Velthari made. We recorded all of it." "You committed genocide," Counselor Mira whispered. Her voice was broken and hollow. "Millions of civilians died in those attacks." "Billions of humans died in theirs," Yuna replied. "We did not start this war. We ended it." Torvok's stone face twisted with anger. "You expect us to sympathize, to forgive? You destroyed an entire civilization." "No," the voice came from behind the 3 human leaders. Everyone turned to see a 4th human enter the chamber. Unji was young, barely 20 years old. She had dark hair and quiet eyes, and walked with a slight limp from an injury that never fully healed. She wore no uniform, carried no weapons. She looked like what she was, a survivor. "I was 7 years old when they came," Unji said. Her voice was soft, but carried through the chamber. "I lived in Busan, with my mother and my little brother. We were eating breakfast when the sky turned blue. My mother grabbed us and ran. She made it 3 blocks before the fire caught her." She paused, remembering. The council watched in uncomfortable silence. I survived because she threw me into a drainage ditch. The plasma fire passed over me. When I crawled out, there was nothing left. My mother was ash. My brother was ash. My school, my home, my friends, all ash. Unji looked at the counselors, and her quiet eyes burned with something cold and ancient. You watched, she said. All of you. 400 species, 10,000 worlds. You watched the Velthari ask permission to murder us. You voted yes in 3 minutes. You called us primitive and unimportant and not worth protecting. You decided our lives did not matter. She stepped closer to the central platform where the most powerful counselors sat. Security forces moved to stop her, but Yuna raised a hand. They froze. So do not speak to me about genocide, Unji continued. Do not speak to me about innocent civilians or the tragedy of war. The Velthari killed my family while you watched. They killed my planet while you counted the resources they would harvest from our corpses. You were not innocent. You were accomplices. Do-hyun activated his device again. New images filled the chamber. Maps this time. Detailed strategic maps showing human expansion over the past 18 months. Former Velthari space, Do-hyun explained. 200 star systems, now under human administration. We have secured all major trade routes and established military bases at strategic points. We control the resources that once fueled the Velthari war machine. Taewoo, the delegation's military attaché, stepped forward. He had been silent until now, a soldier among diplomats. But his role was important. He distributed data packets to each counselor, small devices that contained information no species wanted to see. Analysis of your defensive capabilities, Taewoo said. Every species represented in this chamber. We know your fleet positions. We know your weapon systems. We know the weak points in your planetary defenses. He let that sink in before continuing. We have had 2 years to study you, while you ignored us. 2 years to analyze every battle in your histories, every war you have fought, every strategy you have used. We learned from all of it. Counselor Torvak grabbed his data packet and threw it to the ground. Threats. You come here with threats. No, Yuna said calmly. We come here with truth. The Velthari threatened Earth with 300 warships and overwhelming force. We are not threatening anyone. We are simply explaining what we have become. Jisoo stepped forward, her old eyes fixed on the gathered counselors. Humanity wants peace. Real peace, not the armed truce your galaxy calls stability. We want trade and cooperation, and a seat at this council. We want to join the galactic community as equals. But, she continued, and her voice dropped lower, we will never again be victims. We will never again watch our cities burn while others debate whether we deserve to live. We will never again be weak. What do you want from us, specifically? Yuna answered. Recognition. A permanent seat on this council with full voting rights. Trade agreements with any species willing to deal fairly with us. Access to galactic markets and technology sharing programs. The same rights any other spacefaring civilization enjoys. And if we refuse? Yuna did not blink. Then we take what we need. The Velthari learned that resistance is costly. We would rather build partnerships than conquer enemies, but we will do whatever is necessary to ensure humanity's survival. The council members looked at each other. They saw fear in every face, fear of these strange, violent, impossible creatures from a primitive world, fear of what humanity had become, fear of what humanity might do next. We will consider your requests, Mira said finally. The council will vote tomorrow. Yuna nodded. We will be waiting. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit. At the door, Unji paused and looked back at the assembled rulers of the galaxy. Remember what we showed you today, she said. Remember what happened to the Velthari. Remember that we were children playing in the dirt while you ruled the stars. And remember that we beat you anyway." She left the chamber in silence. The council debated through the night. Arguments flew in 100 languages. Some counselors demanded war. Others begged for peace. A few suggested pretending the humans did not exist and hoping they would go away. None of these options satisfied anyone. Counselor Torvak gathered a coalition of warrior species. The Kethrani, the Vorn, the Skaldi, and a dozen others. Together, their combined fleets numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Surely, Torvak argued, such overwhelming force could crush 12 human ships, no matter what impossible technology they possessed. "We outnumber them 10,000 to 1, Torvak declared. "Their tricks cannot work against such numbers. We must act now, before they grow stronger." Counselor Mira disagreed. The Velthari thought the same. They had 300 ships against primitives with rockets. Now the Velthari are ash. "We are not the Velthari," Torvak growled. "We are better prepared." "Are you?" The question came from the doorway. Jisoo stood there, arms folded, watching the council with eyes that held no fear. "Forgive the interruption, but I could not help overhearing your war plans." Security forces surrounded her immediately. Torvak smiled with all 4 of his arms raised in challenge. "You dare come here alone, without your ships or your soldiers? Brave but foolish." Jisoo did not move. "I am never alone." The lights flickered. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, the chamber went dark. When the lights returned, 12 human soldiers stood in a circle around Jisoo. They wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with quiet energy. They had not walked through any door. They had simply appeared. "Dimensional insertion," Jisoo explained calmly. "We can put soldiers anywhere we want, instantly, without warning. Your defenses cannot stop what they cannot see coming." The soldiers vanished as quickly as they had appeared. Only Jisoo remained, still standing with her arms folded, still showing no sign of concern. "You could have killed every counselor in this room," Mira whispered. "Yes," Jisoo agreed. "But we chose not to. That is the difference between humanity and the Velthari. They killed because they could. We kill only when we must." Torvak's coalition of warrior species had grown very quiet. The demonstration had made its point clearly. Walls meant nothing. Shields meant nothing. Distance meant nothing. The humans could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. "What do you want?" Torvak asked. The challenge had left his voice. Only wariness remained. "I already told you. Peace. Partnership. A seat at this council." Jisoo walked toward the central platform, passing through the ring of security forces like they were not there. "But let me explain something that perhaps was not clear before." She stopped in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the rulers of the galaxy, and spoke with a voice that carried to every corner. "Every species in this room has limits, lines you will not cross, rules of engagement, principles that guide your wars and shape your conflicts. Humans had those once. We believed in mercy and proportionality and the value of enemy lives." Jisoo paused, letting her words settle. "The Velthari burned those beliefs away when they burned our cities. When billions of our people died in the first hours of their attack, something fundamental changed in us. We learned that the galaxy does not reward kindness. We learned that survival belongs to those willing to do whatever is necessary." She looked at Torvak directly. "You want to fight us? Gather your hundreds of thousands of ships. Form your grand coalition. Attack Earth with everything you have. But understand this. We will not defend. We will not negotiate. We will not accept surrender." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every counselor heard clearly. "We will erase you. Every ship, every planet, every colony, every outpost. We will hunt down every member of every species that participates in your coalition, and we will not stop until there is nothing left to fight. The next species that attacks humanity will not be conquered or occupied. They will be forgotten. Silence filled the chamber. Absolute, complete silence. Yuna entered the chamber through the main door, walking calmly to stand beside Jisoo. Behind her came Dohyun, Taewoo, and Eunji. The human delegation stood together in the heart of the Galactic Council. "We do not want this," Yuna said. "War brings us no joy. We have lost too much already. Our planet is scarred. Our children grow up with nightmares of blue fire and gray soldiers." She looked around at the assembled counselors. "But we have also learned. We have learned to build ships that defy your physics. We have learned to fight with a fury your species cannot match. We have learned that the galaxy respects only strength." Dohyun held up his device. "This technology can be shared. Dimensional travel, energy extraction, weapons systems. We would rather trade knowledge than destroy enemies. Imagine what your civilizations could accomplish with access to capabilities that took us only 2 years to develop." "Or," Yuna continued, "you can fight. You can form your coalition and launch your attack, and in 100 years, historians will look at the records and wonder why another great civilization chose to throw itself against humanity and die." Counselor Mira stood slowly. She was old, even by the long-lived standards of her species. She had seen many wars and many peace treaties. She knew when a fight was worth starting, and when it was better to accept difficult terms. "What guarantees do we have that humanity will honor its word?" she asked. Jisoo answered, "None. Just as you offered no guarantees when you approved the Velthari attack. Just as you provided no protection when our cities burned. Trust is earned, Counselor. We are offering you the chance to earn ours." The vote happened 3 hours later. It was not unanimous. Torvok and his coalition voted against. Several other species abstained. But the majority agreed. Humanity would receive a seat on the Galactic Council. Trade agreements would be negotiated. The new order would begin. Yuna addressed the council one final time before departing. "You asked what happened to the Velthari," she said. "Now you know. They attacked a world they thought was weak. They killed billions of people they thought were unimportant. They learned too late that strength is not about technology or numbers or ancient civilizations." She turned toward the exit, her delegation following. "Make sure the galaxy remembers," Yuna said over her shoulder. "You attacked Earth." The doors closed behind the human delegation. The counselors sat in their seats, processing what had happened. 400 species, rulers of 10,000 worlds. They had faced empires and rebellions and cosmic disasters. They had never faced anything like this. Counselor Mira looked at the empty space where the humans had stood. "What have we allowed into our galaxy?" she asked quietly. No one had an answer. In orbit above Nexus Prime, the great black ship that had carried the human delegation hummed with power. Yuna stood on the bridge, watching the stars through viewports that showed nothing but darkness. "Is it over?" Taewoo asked. Yuna considered the question. Millions of refugees still needed homes. Entire cities still needed rebuilding. The scars of the Velthari invasion would take generations to fade. But humanity had survived. More than survived. They had risen from near extinction to become a power that the entire galaxy feared. "It is not over," Yuna said finally. "It is just beginning." The ship turned toward home, carrying with it the hopes and fears of a species that had stared into annihilation and refused to die. Behind them, the Galactic Council struggled to understand what they had witnessed. Before them, Earth waited with open wounds and fierce pride. And across the galaxy, every species that heard the story remembered the same words: whispered in warning. You attacked Earth.